Welcome to Rev Reads. I am Shawn Wilson, and I am thrilled to have you here today because, in some ways, my Rev Read dreams are all coming true in this moment. One of the reasons I started Rev Reads was because I had all these books that I love, and I couldn't really find people who wanted to talk to me about the books that I love. And so I started posting the reviews online and hoping to get some feedback from it. And now I found some people who like the same books that I like. And so we're going to get together here and we are just going to discuss books that we have read recently that we love, books that are coming up in the future that we are hoping to read. So I have the guys from the book podcast here, and they have their own YouTube channel where they, more so than reviewing books as I do on mine, they're interviewing and talking to the authors of the book. And so I'm thrilled to have Scott, Gabe, and Gary here with me to just do some book nerd talking. So if you're somebody who you love books and you want people to talk to you about those books, I think this could be a really enjoyable conversation for you to watch, be a part of. So thank you for coming in and watching this. So first want to get from the book guys. Tell me a little bit about your channel and how you guys got started and what your focus is on it.
Okay, my name is Scott Moffett, and I'm a former pastor, retired now, though I still do have a home church, and we do the podcast, and I disciple some young men. And I guess that answers the
Yeah, why
question.
don't Gabe and Gary, you each introduce yourselves too.
Yeah, I can go. My name is Gabe Penfield. Grandpa first came to me with the idea of let's do a podcast together. And I'm like, there's like 1,000 of them, 1,000,000 of them on the internet. Like, what's this one going to do differently? Like, why should we start a podcast? But over the past 2 years, we've kind of refined it. It's hard in today's world, right? Why do people want to do YouTube? I want to get the views, right? I want to get the subscribers. I want to get monetized, right? So we've tried to, rather than keep that the main goal is just providing books that'll help people improve their walk with Christ or grow closer to Christ. But I'm Gabe. I've gone to Liberty University. I'm going to Word of Life now. I'm trying to figure out the future, whether that's Dallas Seminary or whether that's another opportunity. But I'm just looking forward to this podcast over the next few minutes.
There you go. Hey, I'm Gary Karwoski. I am also recently retired from full-time ministry, though I do guest speaking at churches, and I'm currently the worship leader here at my former church, at least temporarily. I've been in the pastoral ministry for 36 years. I've known Scott since 1978, so we're longtime buddies. And when Scott ran this by me about doing a podcast, I said, forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Obviously, no one will ever watch. So.
That's right. And then he twisted my face a little bit, not my arm, but my actual face, because he couldn't get to my arm. And we decided, I'm still in full-time ministry, but I'll give it a shot. And this is where we're at. We've done, how many now, Scott?
28, I think.
28 or something like that. So that's kind of the story for the three of us.
You should say, though, that, Gary, that we both met at Moody Bible Institute. We
Correct.
went there as a 1-year Bible study for those who wanted to go into mission work or into Bible teaching. And then he and I both went to Dallas Seminary, where we earned our THM and D-Mins. And so we've been on this track together for a long, long time.
Yeah, we've gone to Israel multiple times together with groups. A lot of stuff, a lot of history.
Pastorates all over the country.
Yep.
It's been an interesting life.
Yeah.
So the book podcast is just an outgrowth of our desire to minister to people, as Gabe mentioned earlier. And we love books. So, Shawn, what do you think the number one question is when people enter into my library, which is my home? What do you think they ask me?
What's the number one question about your books?
Yes.
I'm
They
going to
look at
guess.
the books.
My guess would be the number one question is how many of them have you read?
Have you read all the books?
Yeah.
And the answer is no.
No.
Of course.
Yeah, I think we'll move into just where you can find us. I think that's the next question we'll get to. But yeah, we're on any podcasting platform. If you look on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or maybe YouTube. YouTube's the big one. Take a look there, right? We got our full podcast where we interview authors. We've interviewed Andy Woods, which I think you've interviewed Andy Woods, Shawn. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, I've
great
talked
guy
to Andy a
interview.
couple of times.
Yeah,
What's
but
the
we've
name of
interviewed
it?
him. The book, his book.
The book. That's the name of our podcast.
Oh,
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
book.
Podcast is The Book. If you want to
Right.
find us, go to type in @ right, the little @ sign @ Hear the Book Pod, all one word, right? You'll be able to find us anywhere @ Hear the Book Pod. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble. If you like Rumble, we upload there. But take a listen. It's good stuff, and I'll also try to cut it down. So if you maybe have a really busy schedule, can't listen to a full podcast, we'll cut it down to maybe like 5, 10, 15 minutes. Make it easier to listen to.
Yeah, I've watched several of their interviews in the past. I like seeing what the conversations that they guys have. Sometimes they tread into areas that you're not going to find in a lot of other podcasts, like their most recent discussion talking about the Nephilim. I made sure I tuned into that because I also follow probably the quirky view that a lot of people see today, which is that it's sons of God as in demons coming down and having babies. And so it just seems like that makes the most sense in the text, but you guys will talk about those things. And I appreciate that. And so, but we're here today though, to talk about books that we love and favorite reads that we've had recently. And so one of the things I talked about in one of my most recent videos was my top 10 books of the year. And I mentioned that I had a goal in 2022, and I'm one of those rare people who I kept my New Year's resolution. I read 100 books in 2022. I think I finished it with like 2 days to spare with the 100th book. So the question is for you guys, how many books did you read last year? I want to know the number.
You mean individually or for the podcast?
Individually, just your own reading. How many books do you
Oh,
think
my
you
goodness.
covered in 2022?
Gary, you read a lot. How many did you read?
Yeah, besides the podcast books, yeah, I do read. I usually have 2 books going at the same time, sometimes more. I try not to do more than that. I'll bet you, I don't think I've hit 100, Shawn, but I think I've probably done 70, maybe, something like that. That'd be pretty close.
No, that's a great number. How about you, Gabe? You got
Yeah.
you got a lot of reading going on at Word of Life there?
Yeah, I think with the podcast we've done this year, I think 14. I got 14. Grandpa got 18, somewhere in that range. Me personally, probably with Word of Life, with personal, probably 30 to 40, 30, I'd say. Not as much as 70 or 100, but
That's respectable. That's respectable. 30's good. 30's good.
Well, if we count the ones I read to my grandchildren, it'd be about 100. But in reality, just real books, maybe 30.
Okay.
40,
No, so
maybe.
respectable numbers,
Yeah,
30, 30,
yeah.
70. We can take your advice at those numbers. So
Mhm.
if you had to look at the books that you read last year, what would you say are the top 3 books that you read in 2022? So for me, my top 3 books were Simply by Grace by Charlie Bing, Person of Interest by J. Warner Wallace.
Yep.
Excellent book. Got to read it. The print version though. Don't get the Kindle version. And then my number 1 book was Destroyer of the Gods by Larry Hurtado. Just all around excellent book on the early church. So
I
Gabe.
did watch that.
Oh.
That was your podcast, and that was pretty
Oh,
good.
yeah,
I
on that.
enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
As for me, I'll go first, and then the other guys can go. I just went to my favorite books that we reviewed, because our mode of operation is to only interview authors that we think are going to offer books that are worthwhile for people to spend their time reading.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the book I read, the 3 books that I thought were the best that we did this year was As in the Days of Noah by Jeff Kinley, Person of Interest Like Yourself with J. Warner Wallace.
Oh yeah, you guys also interviewed Wallace too, didn't
We
you?
did.
We did. And The Coming Kingdom by Andy Woods, which I
Andy.
thought was excellent. So those are my 3 top.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 of your top 3 were in my top 10.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Gabe, what you got?
yeah, we'll go a little bit off the beaten path. I'll do like 3 of the ones from the podcast that I like, and then I'll do kind of throw another one in there. But
Okay.
Jesus Was a Jew, Arnold Fruchtenbaum.
Oh, you
That was
stole one of mine.
Did I? I really like that, because like went into all the different, why do the Jews today not believe Jesus was the Messiah? And he goes into that, why they believe that, and how to kind of push back against those arguments. That book, I liked. Coming Kingdom. So thorough, so thick. Loved it. And then also another one, Master Plan of Evangelism by Robert Coleman. I don't know if you've read that, heard of it, but it just
No, I have
goes.
not.
Okay, yeah, Master Plan of Evangelism. It goes through Jesus's ministry on earth. Like, what did Jesus do? And we see today a lot of people, we got to get these big events going with hundreds, thousands of people listening. Jesus did things on a personal level, right? He worked with his inner three. He worked into the disciples, the 12, and then he went on to the crowds. But it just shows how his plan was discipleship. The idea
That's
of
an older
discipleship.
book.
Yeah, it's probably, what, 80s,
40 years old,
70s?
at least. Yeah,
Who
40
wrote
maybe
it, did you
50.
say?
Robert Coleman.
Yeah, it's pretty old.
It's considered a classic.
It is.
Yeah. And then my kind of bonus one after that would be Tale of Two Cities. That was a great book. Loved it. I read it earlier this year.
Man.
Like it was I don't know. It was one of those at the end of the book. It's like that really just happened, which you don't think of older books as having that twist at the end, but it had a really good twist that I enjoyed.
All right. Gabe's going to make us all look foolish with this classic literature.
That's right.
That's
My
right.
brother,
Gary, what's your top 3 books?
my
All right,
brother in high school was
I'm
going through that.
I'm
book.
on board with Person of Interest by J. Warner Wallace. I mean, I was just blown away by the book. I was just, I couldn't put it down. And the diagrams and the pictures, he drew
Yeah.
all of them. He drew those himself.
Gary likes pictures.
I do like picture books. That was probably another major reason.
That's how we read 70 books this year.
The more pictures, the better. Exactly. Arnold Fruchtenbaum's Jesus Was a Jew was a great interview. And that's why I liked him. He's classic. He's quoted. He's been around forever. He's quoted by so many authors. He was a fun interview, and he has great rabbi jokes.
He does.
Very good.
So that was a good interview. And the other one is, again, I'm going to throw a wrench in this thing, and I know Scott will bring her up a little bit later, was Lorna Simcox, her book,
Lorna.
The Search, of a Jewish woman coming to know Jesus Christ as her Messiah. And she's now the editor-in-chief for Friends of Israel, their Israel My Glory magazine. And she was just the sweetest interview. She was just a honey. And so I'm going to put her on there because it's a little bit different. And I got an insight into the Jewish culture of why they are so afraid of coming to know Jesus as their Messiah. It was really well done.
All right. No, good calls there. All right. So we're going to go from the ones that are the best to be curious to hear your most disappointing book in 2022. So I'll go first and give my most disappointing and let you know why. And you can give yours. And so the book that I put as my most disappointing book of last year was Creation and the Second Coming by Henry Morris. It wasn't a bad book by Morris, The Creation and the Second Coming. My problem was it didn't really have anything to do with the title. Was just it had no way connected what happened with creation with what happened in the second coming. So what I was kind of looking forward to was a book that would tie what happened in the beginning of Genesis with what is going to happen in the end of Revelation and sort of play those two together. And I was really looking forward to that. And there was kind of none of that there. It was just a book on creation and then had a little sort of dash about Jesus coming back again. And so what I was hoping from it based on the title and even the description on the back, it wasn't really about that at all. I felt like they couldn't decide how to title it, and so they just threw that on there. So that was my most disappointing book of the year because of that. So, Scott, what was yours?
I don't know if it's fair to say this about the book that I'm going to state as my least favorite, because it was more of a Bible study. It was called The Common Thread by Chris Katuka, who I love. He's a great man, godly, just good stuff from him. But the book was about the Abrahamic covenant, and it was, in my view, a little bit superficial and just way too short in its coverage of it. That was my view. Gary?
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind it would be Bob Wilkins' The Road to Reward. Bob Wilkins is a free grace guy, but he's kind of fallen off the rails when it comes to the judgment seat of Christ and the whole process of rewards. And so I thought the book itself would lead people astray as what he makes people afraid of appearing before the Bema seat. And I don't think that's right. And we're currently reading a book called Should Believers Be Afraid of the Art of Darkness? And he really does deal with that issue. So, it's Bob, because I've known him for years, and I really feel like in recent years he's kind of fallen off the rails.
Shawn, you're reading that book too, aren't you?
I am also currently reading Should Christians Fear the Outer Darkness, and I'm actually thoroughly enjoying it. I find it a good read. It's So I'll get to, I don't want to say too much because I'm going to review it later, but it's probably a little bit too long in places. But other than that, they make a thorough argument that the one thing you should not be the one emotion you should not have when it comes to the judgment seat of Christ is fear. If you fear the judgment seat of Christ, you're not viewing it right. And I think they're making a pretty good argument for that. So I guess I could understand that disappointment.
I totally don't understand where they're coming from. I'm just blown away how out to lunch I think they are on that. And I love many of the guys that are pushing that view. I just don't
Bob isn't
understand
alone. Bob isn't alone.
No, there's a lot of them.
People in the crowd with that. So.
Yeah.
All right, Gabe, your disappointing read.
Yeah, this I think was the toughest question because even Gary's book, Scott's book, yes, there was some stuff that wasn't but ultimately there was still a lot of stuff you learned from that. Bob Wilkin had a lot of good stuff in that book. Chris Katolka, a lot of great stuff. Book for me, I think, go back a little bit. I haven't finished it yet because it's Alexander, what's it called? Let me pull it up. My mind just went blank. Count of Monte Cristo, Alexander Dumas.
That's your disappointing read?
It was really good. The first, I got about 40% of the book. Really good. Main disappointment was it was just so long. I got 40% through.
I love the Count of Monte Cristo.
It was
funny.
You're in trouble now.
I loved the arc. I loved how he went to prison, right, for no reason. He was a good guy, did great things, comes out, and he's getting revenge, but he's also doing a lot of good stuff to his previous boss. But that's the part where I'm at, and then it's just kind of tapered off. I don't know. I was disappointed mainly because I couldn't get through it. But I'm still working on it. All right. We'll see how it changes.
I love the Count of Monte Cristo.
His grandmother read it for a book club this year as well. She loved it. So
yeah.
Oh, I put that in one of my favorite fiction books. I love the Count of Monte Cristo. Okay. I have a little tiny bit less respect for Gabe at this point, but we're just going to keep moving forward. All right. So we're going to go from disappointing to exceeding expectation. So what book did you read in 2022 that you weren't really sure about and then ended up being like, wow, that was fantastic? So again, we'll keep going in the same order. So I'll go first again for this. So my exceeding the expectation book this year or last year was Seculosity by David Zoll. I had no idea what I was getting into with Seculosity. Somebody else on the channel sent me a message, told me I need to read it. I didn't even know what it was about or who David Zoll was, but the book is a great read. It's just super enjoyable to read. It's really applicable. It's got a great end theme, but it's just the idea of not treating all of life like a religion, where you need to measure up to sort of this law standard. You take a pharisaical attitude of how you treat your work or your hobbies or your food or whatever. And so Zoll's argument is that the reason people stop going to church is that we've begun to turn all of life into religion. And so now we no longer have time for the true religion we should have of worshiping Jesus Christ, and then talking about the importance of finding grace in Christ in the church at the end. But it was just so good, and I didn't see it coming at all. So Scott, you're up.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Lorna Simcox's book, The Search.
It comes up.
Gary talked about her a little bit, a Jewish lady, how she goes from being embedded in Judaism and then coming out of it through crises in her life, and actually marrying a man who was a Baptist, and then she wondered whether or not he was really saved. And she goes through this life and she intertwines theology in it, which I thought was really, really well done. And in fact, I thought the book could be made into a movie. It was that good. It was outstanding, and I wasn't really excited about reading it when I suggested it, but it turned out to be a very impressive book, a good read.
All right.
Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah. I was totally blown away by J.B. Hickson's The Spirit of the Antichrist. It's 2 volumes. He just wrote it in this past year, so it's very, very contemporary. He talks about the Luciferian conspiracy and how this is all bringing in end times. He names names. He presents material. He talks about the vaccines. He talks about COVID. He talks about the climate issues. All this stuff is leading up to basically the return of Jesus Christ. and it is just so sobering. It's almost depressing to read the thing, except that he does try to bring it back to, but keep in mind, God is in control. He's bringing this to his appointed end, but in meanwhile, it kind of stinks.
It's a little bit dark.
It is.
I'm just gonna say, my favorite moment of this whole interview is probably gonna be, Gary, what book exceeded your expectations the most? This book was kind of depressing, but
But I loved it.
but I love the spirit of the Antichrist. I'm a,
Give me another
I guess you're
Valium.
Gary, are you a glass half empty kind of guy? Is that just, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, JB sure is.
It's true.
All right, and Gabe, what exceeded your expectations this year?
Yeah, I'll do one that I haven't finished, so it's not going to be my official one. But Lou Priolo, Biblical Counseling, What to Expect. You hear our counseling all the time, right? And for me, it's especially worldly
Show us
counseling.
the size of that book again.
It's very thin. So my
And you
favorite
haven't finished
Yeah,
it
that's
yet.
why I like it.
yeah.
That's it.
I just started today. But
Okay.
yeah, I just started today, but it kind of explains counseling. Biblical counseling is all through scripture, right? It comes straight from scripture. Don't go to Sigmund Freud. Don't go to all these different,
Amen.
straight to scripture. So that's kind of where it
Better
exceeded
counseling.
expectation.
Mhm.
Yeah. The other one was All of It Discourse by Tommy Ice. That book, the way it traces Matthew 24 and 25 straight
was an
through
excellent
Revelation.
It was, yeah.
Easy to read, very informative, very deep. Like that one was recommended to anybody.
So I guess do you guys each read the books before you interview the authors? Like, do all three of you read the books before you have somebody come on?
Well, Gary and Scott do for sure.
I do most. I may do a little skimming, but like the Roxer book, I'm working through. Should Christians Fear the Outer Darkness? But as you said, a little repetitive, so I may do some skimming on some chapters.
He's got an excuse, though. He is going to school.
Man, grandfather throwing his own grandson under the bus.
Somebody's got to teach him.
Yep.
All right. So when it comes to your channel, who do you guys want to have come on there the most that you haven't interviewed? So, I mean, maybe you guys all each have the same one or you have somebody different, but are there people that you guys are hoping to have on in the future? Maybe you're already in talks with them, or it's somebody who's just like, I would just love to dream to have that person on.
Yeah, I think. Well, do you want to go first? Do you have people you want to interview, Shawn?
I'm not really, now that as soon as I asked that, I was like, oh man, I didn't think about an answer to this one for my own channel. Usually contacting people for interviews kind of a knee-jerk reaction after I finish a book. So I don't really have anybody that I'm, really, I'd love to have this person on. I mean, I'd like to have Charlie Bing at some point, but I'd like him
He's
to,
good.
write another book and then talk to him about a new book that's coming out. But yeah, I don't really have anybody who, I'd love to have this specific individual on there. I don't think there's anybody who,
I'll give you.
now that I get done saying that, I disagree with a lot of Michael Heiser's stuff. I reviewed his Unseen Realm, and I disagree with a bunch of the stuff he says, but I think I'd be interested to talk to him just to, pick his brain a little bit, even though we're off on, maybe it's because we disagree on so many areas. But I think if I could sit down with Michael Heiser, that might be somebody who I'd like to talk to, just because there's so many places where he connects the dots and I don't connect those dots. So I wouldn't mind talking to him about just, how he comes to his views for some things.
All right, I thought about this a little bit and came up with a number of people that I would like to interview and not necessarily agree with everything they do. The first was Michael Card, the musician.
Oh,
I love Michael's music, and in fact, we use his music to open our podcast with. It's called The Book. And
You
Gary,
got permission for that.
I did. And Gary and I have two very good professors that we would love to talk to, Erwin Lutzer and Charles Swindoll. And if he makes it another year, I'd like to speak with Hal Lindsey. I'd also like to talk to Gary Friesen, who wrote a transforming work for me about the decision-making in the will of God. Excellent book.
Oh, that was like in the 80s, man.
Yeah, it's an older one. I think they're having their 40th or 50th anniversary publishing of it now. But
Could
it's
be.
an excellent book and it's never
Yeah.
going to go out of date. And then a woman who I've heard of but have not had a chance to, I think you interviewed or did her book, reviewed it, Alyssa Childers.
Oh yeah, yeah. I reviewed her
Mhm.
another gospel book. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to talk to her.
Mm.
Gary?
All right, Gary.
Yeah, I looked at your responses, Scott,
Mhm.
and I would just say I would agree with those. We would love to interview, maybe more well-known authors,
Mhm.
but we've had trouble getting them to be willing to be a part of the podcast, which is kind of disappointing because, they don't want to spend the time. And I'm not going to name names here, but it seems like they don't want to spend the time with people that are just
Don't have names.
That don't have
Yeah,
names.
yeah,
Yeah, there you go. That's a good thing. And so that would be a preference. I think there's plenty of unknowns out there, and because they're unknown, I don't know who they are. But up and coming people, I wouldn't mind interviewing people that we've already interviewed on a different book.
Well, we did that with Daniel Weerbach.
Yeah.
We looked at him as an up and coming free grace person and we interviewed him and it was, good.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys have had some pretty decent names, though. I mean, to get Andy Woods and to get Fruchtenbaum and Jay Warner Wallace, I think those are three good names there to have. So
Yeah, credit to them. Thanks for all that they were doing with that. I think the big one right now is Charles Ryrie. We'd love to.
Wouldn't we all love to interview Charles Ryrie? But I'm pretty sure he'd be like,
we need to contact.
I'm going to be too busy for that one.
We need to contact the witch of Endor first.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
Maybe get him back. But more serious, people from maybe like Word of Life teachers I've had. Christopher Cohn, he would be good, but he's written very high level books. Like he has 1,000 degrees, so like very high level. Don't know how much it'd resonate with listeners. Ray Pritchard, good guy from Word of Life, very conversable, very good to listen to. And also Paul Weaver went down to DTS from Word of Life, but he's got some great stuff, great teaching, very in line with what we believe. So love to get those three.
Have you talked to Cone? I would imagine that he might come on. I've had Cone on my channel before.
Oh, have you? Yeah.
And he's really nice. So
we haven't talked with him yet. Just been deciding like, are his books a good fit for our podcast? That's kind of the discussion right now.
Well, we're having an intellectual coming up in March, guy that's really. When I went to Dallas Seminary, I was blown away by the intellect of some of the men that I sat under. I mean, they were just brilliant guys. Craig Glickman, have you ever heard of him?
I have. Glickman's good.
He's coming on our podcast, and I'm looking forward to it. But I hope he just doesn't say stuff that I don't understand.
Well, you caught him on that YouTube interview. That not an interview, but he gives a lecture, and the lecture is brilliant. He goes through every part of systematic theology, and he basically takes it apart and puts it back together. And it's like, holy smokes, the guy does it in 45 minutes. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
No, yeah, I've seen Glickman talk about systematic in person before, and he's he's pretty great. But no, the Cone book, he's got a Sofa rule book that I think might be good for probably you guys and your audience. And then what I interviewed him for was
see, that's just too big right off the bat. That's just way too big.
Words from Reformation. Like this is, I mean, it's a big chunky book, but this is what I talked to him about. You guys could talk to him about the Reformation as well. It was good. So no, but Cone's great. So if you're
this is
Gabe,
more the size.
Yeah, but that's Wood's book, isn't it?
It is.
That's Wood's book.
I just talked to this guy today, Samuel Hoyt. Do you know him on the Judgment Seat of Christ?
No, I don't.
Yeah, he's a very nice man. We're going to be interviewing him shortly. So there's a lot of people out there that don't have recognizable names that have really written important works that are really interesting to talk to. Ron Rhodes, do you know him? He's coming up on our list too.
Oh, he's been around forever.
Yeah, Ron has been around forever. He's another DTS guy. He wrote 40 Days Through the Book of Daniel, which I'm really interested in asking him questions about.
Yeah, the two interviews that I have coming up of the only two authors that I've contacted and reached out to, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Robert Carey. He wrote a book, How Does God Draw People to Jesus? And so we're going to dive into what Jesus means in John 6 when he talks about
John
Father
6:44.
drawing.
Yep.
So I'm really looking forward to that. Carrie's book was excellent on the ways that God draws people and what those words mean. And so, I mean, just for the edification and the education of people and what they'll receive in that interview, I'm super excited to talk to Carrie because I think it's going to be awesome because it was just such a good book. And so while he's not a name, you know, if people watch it, they're going to get a lot from it because his book was great.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm going to interview David Allen, Dr. David Allen, to talk about the atonement and his big 900-page book, 800-page book on the extent of the atonement. So we'll be talking about that in February.
I saw that by the door, holding it open.
No, I was about to say you didn't because my extent of the atonement's at home by my bed because I have 19 pages left until I finish it. So
you know what's interesting about your channel versus us is we only interview live people. You do books about by people who have passed on to glory to be with the Lord Jesus. And so when you asked us to recommend books for you to review, I was thinking more in terms of books that are not only now but in the past that would be good to review. Of course, on your channel, it's hard to find by looking at just the titles the books that you've reviewed all the time. You know what I mean? There's not a list.
Oh yeah.
It's you have to work.
You have to do a little bit of a work to get through all the titles of books that I've reviewed. So there's who we're looking forward to hopefully to hear it and talk to soon. But do you guys have any books that you're looking forward to read in 2023? Anything on your to read list? So I'll start with mine, which if yours isn't as long as mine, I'll forgive you for it. But I got a few on my to read list for 2023. So I'm going to read another book by David Zoll, who I mentioned with Seculosity. It's called Low Anthropology. A book that's been sitting on my bookshelf and I didn't notice it until I did some rearranging last week. And that was C.S. Lewis's An Experiment in Criticism. So Lewis talks about how to criticize books and how to review books. And so I'll be curious to see what Lewis says about what I'm doing, basically. Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey is on my list. Christian Theology by Adam Harwood. So his big new 900-page systematic. I'm hoping to probably not read the whole thing, but a bunch of it. A book called Raising Victims by Leonidas Johnson. It's a book about not raising your kids on the basis of critical race theory. The Digital Public Square, a book on acting ethically in social media by Jason Thacker. A new book coming out called Flood and Fury by a guy named Matthew Lynch, and it's about God's wrath and judgment in the flood and in the judgment on the Canaanites during the invasion of the Israelites. A book called Pastor, Jesus is Enough by Ritbol, so just an encouragement to pastors. One that I like the name of it. It's by Greenwood and Schreiner, and this one's coming out, I think, in like March or April. It's called Ahab's House of Horrors. So it looks at Ahab as he's described in the Bible and then compares it with what we found in the genealogical record in Israel of that time period. So basically it's examining the archaeology with what we see in the Bible, hoping to give a little bit more background in it. I'm a dispensationalist guy like you guys, and Lexham Press has a book coming out called After Dispensationalism. That is an attack on dispensationalism. So I'm reading that to see what that's like. The last name of the authors are Irwin and Perry. And then I want to reread A Defense of Free Grace Theology. I read it really early on in my free grace journey out of a Calvinistic view and into a free grace view. And I want to read it again and then review it. And then also I want to read the big, thick book, Freely by His Grace. And then you guys gave me 3 more to put on my list. The Search, Jesus Was a Jew, and Master's Plan of Evangelism.
I have a question for you. When do you see your wife and children?
My wife encourages my reading. No. I get up really early in the morning. So
some of those titles, to be honest with you, sounded like a punishment to me to be forced to read them.
You're not going to get up in the morning to read Ahab's House of Horrors?
Probably not. It does sound interesting, the title.
Wait, does it have pictures? Is that pictures?
Pictures.
I'm banking on it having pictures.
Pictures.
Like
Gotta
I
have
am
pictures.
counting on pictures in that book.
You are an ambitious man. I'll give you that. So, do you want to hear the books that
Scott,
we're
I
going
want
to
to hear
recommend?
what you want. What you want to read in 2023 for yourself.
Okay, what I'm looking forward to
The
reading
books
right
you
now
haven't read
is
that you want to read this year.
Solomon's Song of Love. Have not read it. I read the original, but he told me there's a lot of new material in it, so I'm going to read that. I have yet to read The Spirit of the Antichrist, the second book by Hicks. I started it, but I have not read, but I'm going to read The Judgment Seat of Christ. And I also have Rush Limbaugh's book, The Goat. I'm going to be reading that, the greatest of all time. Goat.
Okay.
I heard you're a baseball fan.
I am. I'm a big Yankees fan.
Oh, okay. I'll pray for you.
What were you gonna say? What did my baseball thing? What was gonna come
I
up
was
with?
wondering why you didn't have any baseball books on your reading list, or do you?
I don't like reading about baseball.
Really?
I probably have 10 Yankees books, all given to me as gifts. Never purchased one myself. People give them to me because they think that I will love them, but I want to watch baseball. I don't want to read it.
Gotcha. Yeah, people give me all sorts of base. I'm a Cubs fan, and so the books are always about losing.
I was about to say Cubs and Yankees, outside of the fact that we win a lot more than you guys, we don't have a lot of animosity toward each other. I mean, the poor Cubs.
Yeah. Well, you have the big incident in the 30s with Babe Ruth pointing to center field when they
That was
eliminated-
against the Cubs?
That was
Oh,
against
I
the
didn't-
Cubs. Yeah, they eliminated the
Oh.
Cubs. Yeah. So
Good for the Babe.
There you go.
All right, Gary, what do you want to read in
I
2023
have the
that you
same
haven't
list
read
that
yet?
Scott has because he's going to force me to read those for the podcast. But actually, I came across a book called Bibi by Benjamin Netanyahu.
that's brand new.
And
Oh,
it's brand
okay.
new. And I'm going to be picking that up. It looks like it's really, really good. It gives the history, basically the history of Israel. And I've been to Israel. Well, Scott has been there a couple more times than I have. But I guess I've been there 4 times. Scott, you've been there 5 or something like that. And so I'm very interested in what's going on there politically. And that's what this book is about, besides the geographical stuff that we always do. So I'm looking forward to hearing a prime minister, and he's the current prime minister again.
Yeah.
His perspective on what's going on in the Arab world and in the Middle East.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gabe, is yours just your syllabus list for the spring? Is that the books you're reading?
Pretty much. And then there's also another book. It's called the Bible.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
One. No, but I mean, that is like, for me personally, I struggle. Like, I'll read these theological books. I'll be like, yeah, all this good stuff, but then I'll neglect the Bible. And it's like, the Bible should be the foremost.
It should. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the listeners who might be tempted, hey, maybe I'll substitute this Christian book or this theological book for the Bible. It's never a good substitute. Got to be getting in the Word every single day, as often as you can. Taste the Bible is living and active, right? The Bible is sharper than any two-edged sword. It's not the books written about the Bible, but the Bible. Should Christians fear the outer darkness? Right, we're going to be interviewing Roxer sooner or later.
Sure.
But I was reading through Matthew, and like, you come to that sentence over and over again, outer darkness, right? Where there's gnashing of teeth, where there's fire, like, and you might be tempted, and I've been tempted as somebody's free grace. Oh, this parable is talking about servants, so it must be talking about Christians, right? And so, Christians should fear the outer darkness. So I'd love to see his view on it, to see how he interprets that and see how he responds to other people who might teach that.
Well, he's classical dispensationalist, so he interprets it the way that all the big names from the past did: Ryrie Pentecost, Walvard, Gary. Who's some more of them?
I think he even quotes. I think he quotes Schofield in the book.
Yeah.
Schofield,
The
Lightner.
Judgment Seat of book, the Judgment Seat of Christ book that you had gets quoted in the book several times as well.
Yes. Yeah.
By the way, Shawn, I'd be interested in that book that you had on what it means for the Father to draw them to Jesus. What was the name of that? Because
John 6.
John 6:44. Because my Calvinist friends insist that you have to be regenerated before you can believe.
Yeah.
And so
Here's the book. How does God draw people to believe in Jesus?
that's what I want. Yes.
By Robert Carey. So it's a wonderful book. Like I I really, really enjoyed it. And so
He doesn't have to
I
draw
can't
'em,
wait.
does he? If you're going to be saved, you're going to be saved no matter what. And if you're going to be lost, you're going to be lost no matter what. Isn't that true?
Yeah, from the Calvinist view, yeah,
From
no,
the Calvinist view,
drawing
yes.
is the drawing is
If you're into double predestination,
Mhm.
Yeah. Wait, God's up there with a pencil or is it a pen? Like, how is he drawing?
No, like a fisherman, like a
What's
what's,
fisherman.
what's the author's name again? Robert?
Carey, Kerrey.
Hmm.
So Robert Carey.
Okay. Thank you.
And then
Yeah, it's a,
more books. Anything by Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice is my favorite book, and so I'm reading through Persuasion now, and I'm looking forward. I mean, anything they take a little bit to read through, but as
His pronouns are she and
Gabe.
Stop.
my mom likes them,
She
and
and
it's
her.
kind of moved its way down. But I do, and that's reading like I really enjoy reading, and I look
This
forward
might
to
be
reading
too
that.
personal. Gabe, do you have a girlfriend? You should be like a
no.
Casanova. You're reading these Jane Austen books. You should be able to go up to girls and be like, hey,
It's
you
the-
want to talk about persuasion?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, people don't like. They only know the movies and they don't know the books, so it's hard to find people that actually go back to the books and actually care about the books. But yeah, that's it. I enjoy that.
Okay.
It's off my heart.
Like
now.
I
It's
need
off
to
my
send
chest.
you some like H.G. Wells books or something, Gabe.
Ooh, nice.
Get you into War of the Worlds or something.
Uh,
Yeah. So okay. Did not expect Gabe's recommendations and his disappointments. We might read the same nonfiction, but when it comes to fiction, I don't know if I'll invite Gabe back on the channel. But it's nice to have him here today.
Hey, that's not
All
to say I
right.
don't like war movies. War movies.
Oh
are
no,
still
I'm not
good.
that big fan of war movies either.
Ah,
So
okay.
we'll be on this about the same for that. So last question I got on the list for you guys. I love good book recommendations. Some of the best books I've read and reviewed on my channel were because people came up to me and says nobody's heard of this book, but you need to read it and review it. So I get that all the time. And so I want to know if you guys got a book that you think I should read and then review to put on the channel.
I'll go first. Yeah, I think the most, well, some of these I don't really agree with wholly, but I think they're important to read. Jody Dillo's Final Destiny or Reign of the Servant Kings.
Yeah, I already got that.
Yeah. The New Nature by Reynold Showers is really a good book. I think you probably don't need this, but your listeners might like it. Basic Theology by Charles Ryrie.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. it
In
is.
His Steps is an easy book to read,
is,
and
it
people
is.
love
It's
it by
hard.
Charles Sheldon.
Man, I
Right.
forgot about that book. I haven't read that in probably a
I
decade.
I
Yeah.
have a first edition of that book that someone gave me as a gift. I really appreciated it.
Classic.
And finally, I thought another one that might be out of your sweet zone with, deep into theology in the woods, The Hiding Place with Corrie ten Boom. I think that's been
yeah.
lost
Well,
recently.
that's another book I have not read in a long time.
Yeah, and I don't think many Christians are reading it any longer. And that's really a book that needs to be read, especially with the Holocaust denial that's
Yeah,
going on.
yeah.
So those are mine that I thought of to recommend to you.
Oh, no, good recommendations. All right. Gary, what you got?
Yeah, I've got one. It's been around for a while. It's by Randy Alcorn. It's called Heaven. I probably disagreed with half of it. I taught it as a class many years ago, and I kind of the class made fun of me because I kept saying, "Well, in this chapter, I don't agree with this or that." Well, why are you teaching this book because you disagree with it so much? Well, because it gives you thought. It allows you to think through things, what you know. It's well written. I think it's a good treatment. And there's not really too many books available out there on the subject of heaven.
No, I do agree with the lack of material on heaven. I read Alcorn's book probably, how long have I been in the ministry?
Yeah.
15 years. I read it shortly after I went into the ministry, so probably close to 15 years ago. So I probably I definitely need a refresher if I was going to review it. But you're right. We need more good books on heaven, and that's one of the few that actually kind of focus on it. So no,
It's a long treatment.
It is.
Yeah, no,
I think
it's a thick book. I think it's kind of chunky.
Leitner wrote a book on heaven for those who can't believe.
Oh, yeah. That's a shorty.
Yeah, it's not too long. I thought Lutzer's book on 1 Minute Before You Die, which touches on it, is really a good book, and it's short treatment of it. Then there's Between Heaven and Hell, which is it's a dialogue. You might enjoy this a lot, Shawn, between John F. Kennedy, C.S. Lewis, Huxley, and somebody else. But it's like in a conversational mode. I thought that was really good. And then if you run a really old one, Heaven and How to Get There by D.L. Moody.
All right. All right, Gabe, you got anything for me?
I mean, I'm so young. I haven't read through a whole lot of books. But the one my grandpa mentioned, Decision Making in the Will of God by Gary Friesen. He said it impacted his life. It impacted my life. Just it takes the current view and the modern view and the widespread view of, well, there's an independent will for your life, and that if you're not in your independent will, then you're living God's second best, right? And it takes that and flips it on its head and shows, hey, God has a moral will. He's got a sovereign will, but he also gives you freedom and choice, and kind of goes through the whole process, takes what the world believes, compares it to what the Bible teaches, and it's a really good book. I'd recommend for anybody.
Let me add another one in there, guys. I just thought of Erwin Lutzer's "We Will Not Be Silenced."
That's a
that was a great book.
That is really well.
I think you reviewed that, didn't you, Shawn?
Yeah, I did, and you commented that I said his name wrong the whole time.
Okay,
which was true. Apparently, now listening to you guys say his name,
really well done.
So no, I agree. We Will Not Be Silenced and Live Not by Lies by Rod Dreher. Same type of book along the same theme. But those two books I felt like were really good together. So I thoroughly enjoyed both of those. But man, I gotta say, out of all of my videos, this one covers the most book recommendations, the most talking about books. So no, I love this. Like this is what I want to do, and I want to talk to people about these books. And whenever anybody comments on my channel, I always get real excited. And a certain number of times it's dashed because people are talking about how stupid I am. But most of the time they're good. Most of the time it is not that I'm a dummy and don't know what I'm talking about. But
can I ask you a question?
Engagement, so yeah.
Have you written a book, or have you got any that you have in the back of recesses of your mind that you'd like to write?
I have a book that I wrote, and I have a couple in my mind. I wrote a book called Reset Your Life. It's on Colossians chapter 3. And it's about setting your life on Christ, so fixing your eyes on him. And then I believe the rest of Colossians 3, which talks about putting off sins and then putting on certain behaviors. I think the point of those lists is not a legalistic New Testament law, but it's saying these are the behaviors that take your eyes off of Christ, and then these are the behaviors that put your eyes on Christ. So the book is about focusing on Jesus in the first third. The second third is about removing the barriers that prevent you from remaining focused on Christ. And then the final part is about how to live in a daily basis to maintain that focus on Christ.
And where can you get that book at?
It's on Amazon. So Reset Your Life, Shawn Wilson. And then my two dream books in my mind are, I have a slightly non-normal view on Abraham. As in, I believe that in Genesis 12, when God called Abraham, and he made all those I will statements, I think that God was putting himself to the test before Abraham. He was saying, Abraham, I want you to believe in me as your God, and I'm going to do these things for you so that you will believe in me. And then what follows in the rest of Genesis 12 through 12, 13, and 14 is God proving why Abraham should believe in God. So I think if you look at the rest of 12 and 13 and 14, you see Genesis 12, 1 through 3, outside of the final statement of the blessing to all families, you see God fulfill all of that. He's answering those promises to Abraham. People curse Abraham, they get cursed. People bless Abraham, they get blessed. And so he's seeing all of that happen. So then in Genesis 15, when God comes to Abraham and says, I'll give you descendants like the stars of the heaven, Abraham can believe God because of what happened in the 3 chapters before. So
you should take a look at Katulka's book on that, the common thread. I have another question for you. I know this is your channel.
Take over.
Hold on. I didn't get to my last book I want to write. Let me finish the question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So here's my third book, my second book in my head. I want to write a book. This is partly inspired by Andy Woods' The Coming Kingdom, and then half inspired by my current series at my church on the Minor Prophets. But I would like to do a book on what the kingdom of heaven means when Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and make the definition of the kingdom of heaven be based upon the prophecies of the minor prophets. So
Interesting.
everybody would, because they're what came, before Christ, like they were the most recent prophecies. So I think that what the Jews would have thought when Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand, what that kingdom was, most likely was what was described in the minor prophets. And so it would be the kingdom is, and then here are the prophecies in the minor prophets that point to what that kingdom is.
So when you hear ministers, pastors saying from the pulpit, bring your friends or share the gospel so we can build the kingdom of God, do you agree with that?
Poppycock,
Yes, exactly.
balderdash.
Exactly.
We will not build the kingdom. Christ is going to build the kingdom when he comes back the second time. So
we're building
and
a
I
church.
think when you take that view, the church is not the kingdom. It can't be for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
No, but I think when you take that view also, it makes sense of some of Christ's statements. Like when John the Baptist is like, how do we know you're really the Messiah when Jesus is in prison? And then Jesus lists these physical miracles.
Right.
Well, if you take the, he's going to have a physical kingdom one day. The miracles are Jesus saying, I'm proving that I'm that guy that the minor prophets talked about.
But who's the audience?
Yeah, but
It's
the audience is
Jews.
those Jewish.
That's the
And
important
so
thing.
when you turn the kingdom though into the church, then it takes that statement that Jesus made, and it's like that's kind of a weird way to answer that question.
Yeah, it is.
But if you put it in the right Jewish audience, it totally makes sense. I think that's why he turned water into wine. And then there's a bunch of other things in the Gospels that become more clear and make obvious sense why Jesus did what he did. If you take the minor prophet prophecies and use that,
Gotcha.
I think that's good. Yeah. See, that's the problem with progressive dispensationalists. The kingdom is here, but not yet. And so, it's just
bad interpretation.
Yeah, it's bad.
I had this last question I wanted to ask you. I consider myself, and I think Gary does too, I don't want to speak for him, put words in his mouth, but I look at myself as a GP, a general practitioner. I know a lot of stuff about a lot of different things about the Bible, but I don't consider myself an expert in prophecy or an expert in counseling or an expert in this or that. I'm just a pastor that tries to minister to the whole person, the whole body of Christ, and so on and so forth. Is that how you consider yourself, or do you see yourself more as an expert in one particular area?
I would definitely have to say I'm the GP category because I want to have a breadth of things to help my people and my church. And so I feel like you got to be wide read so that you can be helping them in the various areas that they're going to need it. And I mean, my biggest thing is that I want to be delivering them the whole of Scripture. So I don't want to key in too heavily on any different thing. And one of the things I love about reading so many books is that I just feel like it gives me so many more tools to help people.
Sure, for sure.
Like, I was counseling somebody recently who was having some family issues. I'll go into zero details. But one of the things about it was in the minutes I'm talking to him, like that Seculosity book by Zoll was shockingly applicable to a problem that him and his family was dealing with that I was able to bring out. And so just reading all these books, it gives me more tools to, help the people in my church. So
Thank you.
Yeah. Good. So so I appreciate you guys coming on here. I enjoyed this conversation
so did
just
we.
as much as I thought I would. So thank you guys for coming on the channel.
You're
Hopefully
welcome.
we'll sit down and do this again and have another discussion and come down and talk about books. But I really enjoyed it. Like I said, this is kind of my dream. I want to talk to people about these books that I love. So I really appreciate it. So I want to encourage everybody who's viewing and watching this interview, if you've made it to the end, these guys are The Book Podcast. So if you want to find them, it's at Hear the Book. That's here as in your ear, being quick to hear and slow to speak. So it is The Book Podcast. And so I want to encourage you guys to watch their videos, to see their author interviews. I'm not somebody who just kind of knows that they exist, but I'm a viewer. I subscribe to the channel. I watch the interviews. Most often I'm watching those shorter cuts that are on there. And so I appreciate what they do and what they put on and who they talk to. I think they are a good complement to Rev Reads with the author interviews that they have. So I think we complement each other well in what we're doing. So thank you guys for your ministry and thank you guys for being on Rev Reads.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
asking
Shawn.
us. Mhm.
Thank you.
All right. So,
Have a great day.
and if you are new to the channel, I would love to have you subscribe. Just subscribe to join us in what we're doing. I try to give out books every so often to subscribers to the channel. And if you want to support Rev Reads and help with some of the costs that go to having this YouTube channel, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Rev Reads. If you become a member, I give out books through Buy Me a Coffee as well. And become a member, it starts at $3 a month to get into those book giveaways. And we'd love to have you be a part of what we're doing here in making known to the world and to the church some wonderful resources for our Christian community. So I hope you have a blessed day, and thanks for watching.